You need to fundamentally rewire and reprogram the way that your brain works and the way that you see the world. You need to break your paradigm, smash your limiting beliefs, and open up your new mind and create a new version of yourself that does not yet exist. Right now, most of you watching this have been the same person your entire life. You've maybe moved a couple times, maybe you've lived in the same hometown, in the same house, with the same family, the same friends, the same people. And therefore, you just see life the same way. And you have these ambitious goals of making a lot of money and doing a lot of good in your life, but it's really hard for you to even fathom and conceive that into reality because you don't see that on a day-to-day basis. And so you have this idea of the person you want to be, but the person you want to be seems like such a far-fetched idea, a version of yourself, that it's almost hard to comprehend and to understand how to become this person. And so what you have to do is you have to break your paradigms. You have to reprogram your mind the way that you see the world in a way that will allow you to become and step into that best version of yourself. But that's not easy. You see, because right now we are where we are because of all the things we've done. Right? We are an accumulation, a sum of everything that's happened in our life up until this point that makes us exactly who we are in this very moment. And if you're not happy with who you are now, then you doing and living the same life you live now will not make that change, because if we keep doing what we've always done, we'll keep getting what we've always got. And so there's this issue, which is a lot of us want to become this amazing, incredible version, the best version of ourselves, without actually fundamentally changing the way that we are. And we think that if we just stay with the people we're at now, we'll just magically get there. But that's wrong. Because if you only ever hang out with broke people, you will forever, perpetually be broke. And so if you actually want to become successful, you have to change your environment. Change your environment, change your life. Because here's what happens when you change your environment, when you open your eyes to what the world really can be for you, is you start to see what can actually happen. I remember the first time that I ever hung out with other entrepreneurs who were more successful than I were. And I went from someone who in my hometown was making a lot of money. I made a lot of money, especially for a very, very young guy who dropped out of university. I made a lot of money. I felt really good about myself. I thought I worked really hard because compared to the people around me, I was working hard, right? Compared to my family, compared to my friends, compared to my schoolmates, I was working hard. I went to university. I also worked a job at the bank, a 9 to 5, and I worked on my company. And simultaneously also held friend relationships and also went to the gym. I was balancing a lot of things at the same time, so I felt good about myself. I felt validated that I was working hard. That was until I went and hung out with these other entrepreneurs. And what I realized and what happened is I started to realize how I was nothing and how I thought so highly of myself, and I thought that I was doing so much. And when I hung out with these guys, they operated on a completely different scale. They operated on a basis that I couldn't even fathom. It was something that I couldn't even comprehend how they operated. You see, the way these people operate that are up here is so far different than the normal average Joe. It almost doesn't make sense. It's almost hard to fathom and grasp the concept of the way they even view the world, because it's so much different. And the problem is, if you never expose yourself to people like that, if you never surround yourself with people like that, you will forever live a life like this. It's like the story of the fleas. It's basically this idea that there was a bunch of these fleas, or as I called them, flies, which got a lot of people really mad. And they're put in a jar. And they had a jar like this. It was a mason jar, and they put the lid on the jar. And these fleas kept trying to fly up, but they kept hitting the lid of the jar. And so what happened is, eventually, they just stopped trying to fly above the jar lid, because they just figured, well, we can't fly that high, so therefore, why try? We just keep hitting our head, it hurts. And so they stopped flying this high, they stopped trying to escape out of the jar. But then what happened is the scientists actually took the lid off. And what was really, really cool is these fleas didn't try to escape. They didn't even fly higher than the lid, because they had this idea in their head that, well, we can't fly this high. They even then took them out of the glass and just put them back into normal life, and these fleas couldn't fly more than this, because they now had the belief in their mind that that's only as high as they could fly. The craziest part about the story is not even this. It's that when these fleas had their offsprings, when they had babies, their own babies couldn't fly higher than the lid. Which doesn't make sense, because the babies didn't even know why. They never actually saw. They never even hit their head on the lid themselves. But yet they had this idea this paradigm, this belief ingrained in them that, well, mom said, oh, I can only fly this high, and therefore I can only fly this high. And for the rest of their life, they were never able to live up to their full potential, not because they physically couldn't, but because they mentally couldn't, because they put a limiting belief on themselves. And that's what most of you do. That's what most people in this world do nowadays, is they've been groomed and programmed to have beliefs put on them to make them less than they are, with no real world evidence to support that. Right? Most people, even when you tell them, oh, I want to make a lot of money, they tell you, be realistic. That's not possible. Because in their mind, they've been programmed so heavily that the idea of not having to work a 9 to 5, the idea of being able to wake up on a Wednesday morning and not work, or the idea of working on a Sunday, or the idea of traveling and working, or the idea of making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month isn't even possible because they themselves don't believe it. Why? Because they've been programmed to not believe that. And that is why if you only surround yourself with those people, you will only forever hold those beliefs. Even though you may want to fly out of the lid, you physically and mentally cannot, because you've put this constraint on yourself. And so what you have to do is, in order to start flying higher than the lid, in order to escape, you can't do it with the same group of people, because the same group of people will just keep telling you you can't. What you have to do is you have to go find other fleas who have actually flown higher and just see how they do it. And watch them. And as a byproduct of you doing that, by extension, you will then start to believe it's possible. And here's the cool thing about life, is your life is only what you make it. Your life isn't actually real. Your reality that you paint in your mind isn't objectively real. It's just the way that you see life. You see, your life is only a perception of things. We could live two of the exact same lives and we could have two totally different outlooks on it based on our perception, our beliefs, our values, etc. And so what happens, you can completely warp your reality if you can change your mind and change the programming and the beliefs that have been installed and ingrained in your mind from a young age. And a lot of us get these beliefs from our parents, and not to any of our parents' fault, because they only taught us what they knew best, because that's what they got taught. And they got taught that from their parents, and their parents got taught it by their parents, etc. It's not even their fault. That's just all they knew. That's the best interest they had. Going to school, working 9 to 5 is what they were taught was the best thing to do, and therefore they're just trying to tell you what the best thing to do is. They're not trying to intentionally harm you. That's just all they know. But in order for you to break out of that cycle, you have to surround yourself with other people. You have to surround yourself with people that are further than you. You have to surround yourself with people that are better than you, with people that will open up your eyes, people that will break your paradigms, shatter your limiting beliefs, and actually allow you to grow and develop and blossom into the person that you could become. You need to surround yourself with people who will hold you accountable to the person that you should be, not the person you are now. Right? Imagine if a fat person wanted to become fit. Well, we'd have to hold them to the standard of a fit person, which is eat healthy, go to the gym, sleep good, etc. If we held them to the standard of a fat person, they would forever and perpetually be fat for the rest of their life, because you hold them to this standard. But it's the same with us. If we hold ourselves to the standard of the person we are now, we will never grow, we will never develop and become the best version of ourselves. In order to do that, we have to hold ourselves to the standard of the person we want to become. But the only people that can do that are people that have already gone over that path, because they know what this looks like. That's why you have to change your environment. You have to change your network. You have to do that. Because you need people who can see what's possible, to be like, hey man, yes, this is possible. Look, I've done it. And make you believe that, because the people around you, they don't see it's possible. And that's why it's not possible, because there's a good quote, if you can see the invisible, you can do the impossible. Which simply just means that if you can see what others can't see, well, you can do what others can't do. It's not that it's actually impossible, but most things are impossible to people. Most people think it's impossible to make $100,000 in a month because they don't believe it. And that in and of itself makes it impossible the second you don't believe you can't do it. Because your reality is only what you make of it. It's only what you believe it to be. And therefore, if you believe it's not possible, it won't be possible for you. And it's that simple. It's very simple. Very, 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 very simple. Just not easy. It's not easy to reprogram your mind and reprogram the way you've been thinking for the last 15, 20, 25 years. That's very difficult to do. But if you can undo that, if you can undo that program and reprogram your mind to be successful, you can unlock new heights that you never even thought were possible. And that's what I'm encouraging to, and that's what I'm trying to do, is show you what's possible. Every time I share my story, many people get offended and say, yeah, Stefan, but this and this and this and that. Right? Like I'm a foreigner. I was born in Europe, moved to Canada when I was 6. I didn't speak any English whatsoever. I got bullied. at school, like most people did. I was antisocial. I was introverted. I couldn't speak well. I couldn't communicate. I couldn't articulate. I didn't have any social skills. I was never good at that stuff. I never had lots of friends. I always got picked on. Right? All these things, yada, yada, like most of us. I didn't like school. It never meshed with me. I never felt a sense of belonging. I never felt a sense of purpose there. And yet, despite all of those things, the odds being stacked against me and all these other things, I somehow managed to not only drop out of university, make hundreds of thousands of dollars a line, even quit my 9-to-5 at the bank. And now I get to live a life where I call my buddy up and say, yo, what are you doing next week? He says, nothing. I said, cool, I'm coming over. And I go fly over to his place. Because why not? Or when the boys text and say, yo, you want to go to Brazil? We just go to Brazil for 6 months and buy a sick villa. Why? Why not? And that's the life I've been able to live. But that's only because the people I surrounded myself with and the new paradigms that I've installed into myself that have allowed me to do that. That's the only reason why. Because I've actually been shown what's possible. And when you see what's possible firsthand, you start to believe it. And once you believe it, you can become it. You can only become a millionaire if you believe you can. You can only become fit if you believe you can. You can't become any of these things if you don't believe it. You can only become depressed if you believe in it. If you do not believe in depression, you cannot get depressed. If you do not believe in cancer, you cannot get cancer. I'm not talking about is cancer objectively real or not. I'm just saying that if you do not believe in it, you can't get it. If they tell you, oh, you have cancer, yeah, I don't believe in cancer. Well, you have it. Well, that's cool. You can say that I just don't believe it. You can say I have cancer. That's fine, but I don't believe it. Therefore, I don't have it. Right? Now, granted, I'm not here to argue against science. That is a bit of an extreme approach. Right? That may not serve you well. There's actually a brain tumor story. That's a whole different one. But this idea that you are what you believe in, and you can become what you believe in, which is why if you believe that you can truly become successful, and I'm not talking about, this shallow little 1% I kind of believe. I'm talking about you have 100% undeniable conviction and faith in yourself that you can become the person you say you want to become, and you have that belief in yourself, then you can become it. But you have to be delusional. You have to be delusional to an extent where people think you're absolutely insane, because that's the only way to make it work. You have to be delusional. Elon Musk, very famously considered very delusional. Look at him now. Is he delusional? Yes. Did it pay off? Yes. But you have to be delusional, especially in the world we live in now. Especially with how many modern, normal, average people there are, you have to be delusional. And you have to fight the norm and reject modernity. You just have to do those things. So I hope I'm helping you break your paradigms one by one by one. I want you to reflect back on the last 3 months of your life and ask yourself, how much have I progressed? How far have I actually come in the last 3 months? And don't sugarcoat it. Truly sit there and go, how far have I actually come in the last 3 months? Or is it just the same thing over and over and over and I'm not really amounting to anything? And if it's the second one, the latter, which most people will say if they're honest with themselves, what's going to change? New Year, right? It's happening in about 30-something days. New Year, will that change? Magically, because it's a new year, all of a sudden you become a new person? If you're smart enough, you'd say no. And so what would change? And once you realize the answer is nothing, you have to realize it's up to you. It's in your control. It's in your power to make that decision and change. It's up to you. But you just have to make that choice of consciously going, you know what? From this day forward, I'm going to hold myself to the standard of the person I need to become, not the person I am. And that takes some deep visualization. One of the exercises I love to do is sit down with myself at night, just get a notepad out, notepad and pen, that's it, no phone, no nothing, and sit there for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes, even an hour more, and just sit there and write down, what does the successful version of you look like? Right? If you're not making any money, what does a 10K version of you look like? If you're making some money, what does a 100K version of you look like? Right? If you're making 100K, what does a $1 million version of you look like? What do those versions, what is that next version, the version you want to become, the version you want to grow into, what does that person look like? What characteristics do they have? What attributes do they have? What skill sets do they have? What do they do that you don't do? What are the standards they hold themselves to? And just write it out. And especially write out the standards. What are the standards that they hold themselves to? And once you've written out those standards, you now have a list, a checklist, a almost Bible, we'll say, of things that you can reference to and hold yourself to. And say, these are the standards of the person I need to become. That's what I'm going to hold myself to. And then once you do that, then you'll become successful because you're holding yourself to the standards of the person you want to become, not the person you are. That's the most important thing. So break your paradigms and change your life. Should I have a call to action? Should I tell people that they can buy something from me and they can join my networking group, my inner circle, where We talk every single day and help you break your paradigms, to help you realize what's truly possible, so that, you know, when we have our in-person events, we can all go meet up and mastermind together in person. Should I tell you about that? Oh, I guess I just did. If that's interesting to you, you can click down below. I don't give a fuck if you click or not, because it's application only. So you can try and apply. Maybe you get accepted, maybe you don't.